first time a guy asked me, did you come? And it was fairly early in my sex times. And I had, first of all, no idea what that meant because I had never heard the word come before that question. So when you're very young and fresh, maybe
you're like, come where, go where?
I'm like, what? And then I felt in my body, I had to say yes. So I just said, yes. But I didn't know what he meant, and I didn't know if I did. And then I went on this search, like, oh gosh, well, what is this word come? And then my friends were like, oh, it means like, did you orgasm? I'm like, oh, I'm like, well, I actually don't know if I orgasmed. And then I remember sneaking into the library and like opening up an encyclopedia and trying to look up orgasm, and then reading the description, it didn't match my experience. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh, I guess I didn't come. And then for years, so I started being sexual around 18, mm-hmm. and it wasn't until my mid-20s where I finally figured out that I was actually having orgasms, because the way I experience orgasm is so different in my body.
Well, I think that's a really important piece here. Is the question is misleading. How do you make a person come?
Yes.
So that's, I think, right, if you're trying to make yourself or make another person come, where that's like very goal oriented, then
yes.
normally it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, yes, the definition that we have of orgasm, which is intermittent contractions over a certain period of time, normally for, I don't know,
in the base of the vagina,
15, vaginal contractions, which is like your pelvic floor squeezing involuntarily. That's the kind of more strict definition of what an orgasm is, and frankly, that's also kind of the description of what happens when you are, let's say, using a vibrator on the clitoris. So something that's more clitoral-based stimulation, specifically as well. Mm-hmm. Tip of the clitoris glands, like external stimulation of the clitoris, will lead towards that type of sensation and orgasm, which a lot of people then go, okay, yes, I have had an orgasm, or no, I'm not, or I'm not experiencing other ones because the other ones don't feel like that, so then they write it off.
Exactly. So one of the things with the work I've done with women is have them define for themselves what orgasm is. Because sometimes our experience won't match anyone else or any book or any story. Or I've had so many different types of orgasms that sometimes they're once in a lifetime, they never happen again. And so by definition of orgasm, usually I define it as a change in felt state, so an altered state of awareness and consciousness that involves the body. There's pleasure involved, there's sensation of heat, or tingling, or expansion, or there's a lot of different bodily things. There can be contractions, pleasurable ones. Sometimes I've had almost uncomfortable levels of contractions. The orgasms are very, very intense. There could be a feeling of losing one's self, losing one's mind, losing sense of time. Could be really emotional, where I just start crying. So you can see that it's a sexual state that expresses itself through, I guess, arousal, and then these peak moments in arousal. And the reason I say peak moments in arousal versus the peak moment in arousal is because our bodies are capable to sustain orgasmic experience in states for long periods of time, but we've been sold to go for the one orgasm.
That then normally has this kind of peak experience, and then a big drop off of don't stimulate me, or I don't feel anything, or this is uncomfortable even to be touched there.
And the other problem I have with how to make her come, even though I think it's a lovely desire, we need to be asking a different question. How can I give her the most extraordinary levels of pleasure? Or how can I give myself, if I'm solo, the most extraordinary levels of pleasure, with orgasm being a side effect of extraordinary levels of pleasure? Could you speak to that a bit?
Well, I mean, if you're thinking kind of that, an orgasm is this clitoral definition, then a lot of times you will ignore other things that can feel extremely pleasurable along the way and create this felt state change. The other thing too is that when you're so goal-oriented on that, then the whole journey up and towards the felt state change also gets ignored. And then also when you get fixated on when that shift happens, then you also miss out on how to kind of stay into that state and allow it to expand. Eventually, as you start to trust and become deeply in tune with following your pleasure, then it's something that you dance with, you court, you can meet it if it's very fiery at the beginning, or maybe it needs to kind of warm up slowly. But the big shift that ends up happening, though, is that you're walking side by side with it, nurturing it to become more aroused, versus, oh, it's out there somewhere, I need to chase and find it, versus going, you know what, my body actually is in whatever state it's at, and I simply just need to activate it, as opposed to, I'm looking for this button that's going to give me this kind of magical sensation. So it becomes a more full-bodied experience. It also becomes much more meeting yourself where you're at, and then enjoying the ride, and then allowing that to go wherever it is.
Because one of our mission points is to bring more beauty into the act of sex, and joy and pleasure and playfulness, all this. Pursuing pleasure over orgasm, I think, is going to help people attain actually more orgasms, but actually more connection and more repeated desired interaction. So sometimes I've had amazing sexual experiences and I don't orgasm, but I've had sustained pleasure for hours. That's exquisite to me. And if at the end of all that you say, well, did you come? And then you're disappointed, I would be confused, because you just gave me a beautiful adventure into the land of pleasurable ecstasy. And okay, I didn't necessarily have a peak experience or even the other types of orgasms. There wasn't this thing that happened, but I'm in a felt state that's so extraordinary, so nourishing to my system, that I'm actually grateful and delighted for it.
Well, it also leaves you wanting more. Sometimes the type of orgasms that we classically want to go after are like, okay, I've had enough stimulation,
and they
stop now. You flatline, and you don't actually want to have more contact with that person.
Correct. So in the second half, I do want to share a very naughty experience I had at a dungeon.
Wow.
Kind of sex-party dungeon. With two experts, like a porn star and someone else who anyways, it was really, but it will show the very difference between a pleasure-based orientation orgasm, what happens to the body, and an orgasm that is a peak but flatlines.
Are you looking for one place that you can go to source all of your answers to the questions that you may have around relationships, intimacy, and passion?
Then look no further. Join our free membership, where we have 20-minute podcasts just rich with information, free mini courses, and so much more. Join us at embodiedlove.love.